and welcome to Catholic Current, where we give you an update on events affecting the Church in the United States. From Washington, D.C., I'm Mara Moser. Pope Francis was hospitalized this week for a respiratory infection. We join with people across the world in praying for the Holy Father's health and recovery. It was exactly 3 years ago that Pope Francis gave his remarkable blessing to the city and to the world amid the pandemic. At the March 27th Urbi et Orbi blessing, the Holy Father stood in the pouring rain looking out at the empty St. Peter's Square as bells tolled. People across the world watched the unforgettable scene and listened as Pope Francis offered a reflection on the Gospel of Mark.
The
storm exposes our vulnerability and uncovers those false and superfluous certainties around which we have constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits and priorities.
Le nostre abitudini e priorità. Ci dimostra come abbiamo lasciato addormentare.
It shows us how we've allowed to become dull and feeble the very things that nourish, sustain, and strengthen our lives and our communities.
Signore,
Lord, you are calling to us, calling us to faith,
non è tanto credere che tu esisti,
which is not so much believing that you exist, but coming to you and trusting in you.
in questa Quaresima
This Lent, your call reverberates urgently. Be converted. Return to me with all your heart.
It was announced this week that Pope Francis's message of hope for humanity at the height of the pandemic will soon travel around the world, literally. It will be embedded on a microchip in a satellite, and the words of Pope Francis's address will be transmitted back to Earth each day for ham radio reception. We have a full story from Catholic News Service Rome about this endeavor on the USCCB website. Next week is Holy Week in the Catholic Church, and it will also begin the Jewish celebration of Passover. We spoke recently with Bishop David Talley about the work of the Committee on Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs. Here's more from that conversation about the bishop's work to combat antisemitism in this country.
Anyone who's watching this would know what we're talking about. There have been many sad, depressing instances throughout our country and all over the world about a rise in antisemitism. One of the things that the committee did with our theologians is to put a blurb in our bulletins before Holy Week, reminding all that there cannot be any anti-Semitic sense, feeling about what happens to Jesus of Nazareth on Calvary. This was at a specific time, under specific circumstances, and we are not called, we don't believe in painting everyone with the same broad brush.
Amen to that. Thank you very much, Bishop Talley.
Thank you.
You can find additional resources, including frequently asked questions about Judaism that come up during the Easter Triduum on USCCB.org. You can also watch the complete interview with Bishop Talley on the USCCB YouTube channel. This week, 2 Vatican dicasteries released a joint statement on the so-called Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery is rooted in 15th century papal bulls that granted certain rights to colonizing powers. In their joint statement, the dicastery said that the Doctrine of Discovery is not part of the teaching of the Catholic Church. They wrote, "In no uncertain terms, the Church's magisterium upholds the respect due to every human being. The Catholic Church therefore repudiates those concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of indigenous peoples, including what has become known as the legal and political Doctrine of Discovery." Archbishop Paul Coakley, Secretary of the USCCB, issued a statement in solidarity. He wrote, "May God bless with healing all those who continue to suffer the legacy of colonialism, and may we all offer true aid and support. By God's grace, may we never return to the way of colonization, but rather walk together in the way of peace." Thanks for joining us for this edition of Catholic Current. You can find out more about any of this week's topics by visiting us online at usccb.org or follow us on social media at USCCB. I'm Mara Moser. See you next week.